John, they do make a lot of these like mini, so like the Nook size devices that you can pick up. Those are also another good alternative. And like Corey was saying, you put Proxmox or something on there, and you can run tons of VMs on there, totally free, no licensing, and kind of get pretty much the same results.
So,
but you can't play games on it.
But you can't play games on it. That's true.
Yeah. So the only thing I don't like about it is I've got to go in, and I know it's just
you can turn that off. That was the first thing I did. I turned that off so quickly.
Like gaming shit. Like I don't need my computer to like be sparkly like some kind of goddamn Twilight movie.
RGB is a state of mind, and you don't have it.
Oh, I'm gonna
put so many RGB in my life.
But it works really well. I got Windows Subsystem for Linux working on it. I can run a bunch of wireless tools on it. I've got Debian now running on it. I've got my class VM running on it. Also, I love the fact that if you go to their website, they have instructions to pry the thing open and put a much larger hard drive in it. And it's built into the BIOS to restore it. So you can put in a new hard drive, you go into the BIOS and do cloud restore, and it joins a wireless
pulls down
network.
That firmware right from China.
And pulls it down right
backdoored firmware,
mainlining that shit like right into the system.
Onto your Wi-Fi. It's a great way to join a botnet. I love
it.
It's awesome.
But it works so simple.
I'm swearing again. I need to stop swearing, by the way. If I swear anybody.
So we have a swear jar, and then it all goes to
like a swear jar.
Right.
And every
Ryan,
time I say any naughty word or anyone does, we're going to donate more money to the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Right, start a swear jar.
Whose job was it to tally that, by the way?
John, are you creating a challenge for me to do further donations to various organizations, sir?
I got to be careful about this. This can blow up in our face. But we have to do better, right? It's not just about that. I got a very well written, very respectful email from somebody that was a little bit disconcerted with our language. And it's funny because they're like, "Oh, this person was swearing," and they were listing out all the swear words and all this, and I'm like, "Oh, that was me. that was me."
John's like ready to call me up and be like, "Corey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Dang, it was actually me."
It was me. Yeah, it was all me.
Well, I will say, I do think so. If you swear early on, then the whole stream gets categorized as like an adult stream on YouTube. Then like on YouTube, people are watching on their work computers and they have to like log in.
Yeah.
We don't want this to become an OnlyFans style Infosec podcast.
I do hear, John, that it is very profitable. OnlyFans Infosecs.
Yeah, but no one wants to see my feet.
No one said you had to show your feet.
See, I can go to that line without swearing. Right. I can go right up to that line. And
can you though?
Huh?
I don't think you can.
The
swear jar will be the judge.
Well, the swear jar will be the judge at the at the end of the show. Right.
We'll have AI calculate all the swear, so it's like an automatic counter.
That would be amazing if it just pops up on the screen. It's like, John, it was $5.
So Ryan, as I swear, if we could pop up on the stream, just what the dollar amount is.
Oh my god!
What's the value per word?
Yeah. What's the value? Or is it different for different words?
What should the amount be? It's got to be like a real amount.
I think
$5.
You have $5 per swear, but the swears are subjective to only the worst ones. Like if I say poopy, that doesn't count.
No, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
And if anybody is like, he said poopy, and I consider that to be a swear word, you're lying. You're not fun at parties. No one likes you.
You are definitely not fun at parties. Your
children will abandon you when you die. So, see, I can be offensive without swearing.
Yes, John, that's the goal. That is the challenge.
I didn't swear, Mr. Gunkel. I didn't swear.
I swear I didn't swear.
I swear.
Ryan is going to be the judge of whether or not it's a swear.
I do think it's funny that people like you're offended because someone is swearing, but you could be like really offended and someone could not say any swear words. So like,
yes, correct.
Like, this bar is weird.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I grew up in ranching community, and that's how we communicate with each other, right? I mean, it's like it's our hesitation noises. And I especially like it whenever I'm around people that's like, well, someone who swears, it's a sign of low intelligence. It's like, no, it's not.
Do you remember the scene in The Wire where they don't say a word other than curse words and they do like a whole crime scene investigation? Like they're lining up the bullet. They're like, F.
Oh, that reminds me. Can we do a competition against South Park and how many times they said the F word and how many times we did?
No.
Oh, okay.
Now I got somebody
I don't think you want to compete with South Park.
Swear words, but no, I like Anthony Jeselnik's take on this, right? Like you have comedy, right? And that comedy can be offensive, right? And if you're offending people, you suck, basically. And the artistry comes in getting away with it, right? So how do you say these things in such a way that is not horribly offensive?
Yes. So. How do you make them laugh, but also still be offensive, but not offensive to them, right?
Well, not even that, but yeah, it's we've got to go for the artistry, and I need to be doing better because I've been swearing since I was like 2. So they've got a lot of work.
The key is to either use it in a pun or use a word that's plausibly the same. What you don't want to be doing is throwing out fracks and fricks and shites.
I can do that though. I can do that. If I want to say, what was the Battlestar Galactica F word replacement?
It was definitely frack. Yeah.
Frack?
It was frack.
But then that's also Frack Magazine, baby.
Oh,
damn right.
You know where they swear a lot? The military. Everywhere. Everyone.
The F word is literally every other word.
Every word.
Get your over to the
Yeah. Oh yeah. There were 0 Fs given.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's a lot of them given.
Anytime I trained at Fort Gordon, 25 Delta 255 Sierra down in Holbert Field, Destin Beach, I think I literally had one day where I taught the entire class like that episode from The Wire. It was nothing but swearing. And it was my highest scoring day ever.
Nailed it. And,
they related to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one reason I realized that swearing is so prevalent in the military is there are no children anywhere to be found in the military. Like,
really? They don't just give kids M16s and let them go?
I know it's weird. I know it's weird, but it's like there's no really like a whole lot of cross section of like kids around anyone. So it doesn't. Also, people are kids.
I swear around my children. That makes me a bad father. Yeah. All right, let's kick it off.
All right,
send it.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security Talking About News. I should call it BHIS and Friends because we have other people that are not Black Hills Information Security, but they're very cool people nonetheless. You should check them out. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Chinese hackers breaching more networks because that's what the Chinese do. Ransomware crew abuses AWS native encryption, basically finding S3 buckets that are open. You can create a digital copy of yourself and your own personality in just 2 hours. And it won't like you either. We will also be talking about LDAPNightmare and fake proof of concept malware. We're going to be talking about how a hacker broke into Path of Exile game. I was surprised Beyond Trust wasn't involved in that one. License plate readers, leaking real-time video feeds, and all kinds of vehicle information. And woke up, got out of bed. A day in the life of a prolific voice phishing crew. Speaking of crews, I'm joined by the illustrious crew that we tend to have on this. We have Run GRC with us. Hello. We also have Shecky, as always. Thank you so much for joining. We have Ralphie. After a long, long absence, he's finally back. We have Make Dur News, or Make Dur Hackety Hack. Don't talk back. Corey, thank you for joining. Eric is on, speaking of friends of Black Hills Information Security that do really cool security stuff that hopefully he'll talk a little bit about. And then, of course, Ryan, the man who makes us all look and sound fantastic. And more importantly, if you're just dialing into this or you're watching a recorded version, I'm going to attempt to swear less. I apologize profusely for swearing. It's a bad personality trait. I'm aware of that. But every time I do, I will donate $5 personally, not from BHIS or Antisyphon, because that'll bankrupt the company. I am going to donate $5 to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF. So you guys can help Ryan keep count of that. So I'm not going to go through what the swear words are. If I say poopy,
that's a freebie. That's like the free,
Also, if it's part of a pun, it doesn't count.
If it's funny.
Like if we're talking about US
name or it's in the source code, it does not.
Okay, what about direct quotes? If someone in a news article has direct quotes, don't count either.
No, direct quotes are fine. It's just like reading
the internet for direct quotes that have swear words in it.
C. Whitlock says John is going back on cheap ramen. Sorry, kids. You're not. No, we're not going to do the George Carlin list, even though the George Carlin list would definitely be included in those lists. But let's jump straight in. Do we want to? Which one do we want to start out with, Corey, Ralph?
I think so. I mean, my take. I think the prolific voice phishing crew was a really, I would say, eye-opening. Like my blood was pumping reading this article. Especially because in the article there's a video linked that basically is a live phishing call, which for those of you, if you've never participated in one or done one, they're quite the adrenaline rush, especially if you've done a lot of them. It's really crazy and kind of gut-wrenching to see someone get vished live. Basically, it's kind of just criminals turned on each other, as they typically do, and a member of a criminal group decided to contact Brian Krebs and leak a ton of information about their operations and how they do things and what they do. Basically, this is how things work in the criminal enterprise, right? You have the biggest threat to criminals is not FBI or CIA or whatever. It's other criminals, right? So, basically, it's a cool article. They're using kind of normal techniques that we would see for phishing. The main one they're using that they call it in the article is they basically spoof someone's phone number and they call an Apple support line, and then that Apple support line lets them send a password reset to the phone, because they're spoofing that number. So it's basically like a lack of verification on, phone numbers, because there's no way you can do it. There's no way you can verify an incoming dialer if you're like an automated phone service, or at least there isn't one implemented right now for this service. So we see this attack before. I mean, we've even demonstrated this before. Like if you spoof someone's phone number and call their ISP, it'll usually be like, are you calling about service at, and then it'll just give you their whole address. So there's plenty, they're abusing known vectors that are kind of like, they're not breaking any ground here, but it is cool and kind of gut wrenching to see. In this case, they're going after someone's iCloud account, and then they actually, end up getting, but they get access to his iCloud. That picture of John as a Ferengi is just something.
Just disturbing.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a cool article, worth a read. Not really super newsworthy, but it is interesting to see criminals turn on each other and share all the TTPs, kind of like Conti or other. There's fun examples of this.
So I've got a question for the panel. Are we seeing more of this because it's a new attack vector and it's effective, or are we seeing this because going after the endpoint, going after creds is difficult? Or is it a combination?
I think it works because companies have put verification. It's required because companies have put increasingly strict verification methods in place, right? If there's an MFA bypass in someone's iCloud, you can just use that, right? That's previous iCloud hacks we've seen have relied on MFA bypasses. But now that there is MFA and all this account verification stuff, I think it's just required. I think we'll see a rise in phishing for 2025. That would be one of my predictions. More phishing, more of this like handoff. They actually talk a lot about the criminal organization. Like they have 4 people on the call. One is doing the call. One is draining the accounts as they get access to things. The other one's just sitting there watching, taking notes, and the other one is, setting up
credence. But it also lends credence to social engineering calls whenever you can hand it off to somebody else, right?
Totally.
We're like, oh well, hey, I'm going to hand this off to my manager. Could you just hold for a couple of seconds? As soon as you do something like that, it doesn't feel like just this one random person's calling you up to
exactly.
right?
Yeah, and they're using known services. So like on the call, like if you watch the video, they spoof the number, they call Apple, and then the guy gets a verification on his phone that says you've requested a password reset, and then that's when he literally says out loud, "Oh, so you are the real
this
Apple."
is Apple.
Yeah, exactly. So he literally says, "Oh, so you're Apple," right? Because they abused a known, like a valid channel to reset an account. I mean, you could argue Apple will probably end up disabling this method now of accounting reset. Like they probably should. But I think it's just, there's a higher level of trust required to pull off these attacks and so many more steps, right? Like you have to get access to the Coinbase. You have to get access to the, iCloud account. Then you have to submit a transaction. Then they have to approve the transaction. It's just a lot more steps these days.
Yeah. To answer your question, John, this isn't new, right? Like this was like Kevin Mitnick's, I would say
bread and butter, 1999.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So like, I mean, this isn't new, but to follow up what Corey just said, which is absolutely true, is that the reason I feel like it has, felt like it's a resurgence is because a lot of technical controls have gotten into place, and hacking the human on the phone, right, is easier than necessarily coming up with a new compromise to a MFA system or something else that's unknown. So
totally. And it's
endpoint
incentivized. Like if you look at the criminal, like the way they monetize this, they do everything from a flat fee per call to you get 10% of the take to you get 100% of the take. Like it's totally like kind of like initial access brokers, right? Where you have like, oh, are you good at social engineering? Well, I'm good at draining Coinbase accounts. Let's team up, share the profits 50-50. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the Mitnick thing is a really important aspect of it, right? Like you said, there's nothing new with this. But I keep wondering though, in the industry, are we in fact getting better in the aggregate on the whole? Or is it just my echo chamber is getting better, right? Like this is one of those things we've talked about. And Eric, I'd like to get your opinion on this too. I think that there's a big selection bias in a lot of security firms, because whenever I'm talking to other people in, like, say, larger firms, and I'm saying, man, some of our customers are getting really good. Like they're running EDRs, they're tuning EDRs, they're doing adversarial simulation, they're doing really good risk-based analytics in their SIM and all of these different things. And like, I talk about what we're seeing, all of these good things that they're using, and they're like, yeah, our customers are still using password 1234 for their cloud accounts. I don't know what you're running into. So I always wonder, are things getting better? And this is just attackers evolving and going back to some of these tactics, which always worked, because trying to do malware is hard, or is it just that's what we're seeing? So what's your take on that?
I have to agree. I think our echo chamber is, it's more of, we need to turn around because we're preaching to the choir analogy, right? So we're talking to our clients, even on our side of the fence, and they're getting better, and they're getting better because they got hit by an incident. So, they're a little bit more aware. But however, post incident, what we see 9 times out of 10, within about 2 years, they fall back into the de facto what their business operations used to be. This Apple thing really is nothing more or just a different flavor of what's already been going on with Apple. You could take Microsoft device authentication method and be able to get access into the domain just by phishing as well. If you've been around in the industry long enough, like most of the people probably in on this call and in the chat, anytime there's, say, about 10, 15 updates, old exploits start creeping their way back into product line because we don't remember why this thing got commented out or whatever the case was. And we just see old exploits coming back over and over again to the tune. I don't think the industry as a whole is getting better. I've made the statement many, many times that, you take a look at the past 5-10 years of CISA reporting for Cybersecurity Month. It's the same thing. I almost had
nice save. Nice save.
Oh man, that almost cost you, dude. I could see money just like in your brain, just being like, no.
Dollar bills coming out.
Yeah, it's just the same thing over and over again. So I think our echo chain, we're just getting really good at communicating to our clients, and they are getting wiser for it. But I am of the massive belief, and I think I said on here several times, that a business is not going to change until they're required by whatever external force to make that change.
Let's talk about a change that a company had to make. Let's talk about that dental one. Did anyone see that? It's pretty funny. It's kind of a brief stop. The pun in the article title was just so bad. Which the pun was basically that there was a dental company based out of Indianapolis, I believe, that was caught lying through their teeth. There should also be a pun jar. Should there be a pun jar?
Yeah, -5.
Yeah, -5. Wait, what?
We recoup.
You come back.
So basically, this is I guess I would call it a mid or small size dental company based out of Indianapolis. They were recently fined $350,000 because they were hit by ransomware, specifically Medusa Locker, and they told their clients, "Oh no, we just lost your data because we were formatting a hard drive." Which, like, that excuse might have worked 10 years ago, but today apparently not. So, talking about consequences, like $350K, obviously not it's not going to bring down the house. It's not that big of a sum but I think for a smaller company, I mean, they have like 5 or 6 locations. That's a decent chunk of change.
Corey, I remember this story very vividly. So people who don't know, I mean, this is literally 5 years ago, where it's almost like QuickBooks Online. They were actually hosting servers for dental organizations, and they literally came out at the time and said, "No, we're dealing with a cybersecurity incident, aka ransomware," and they were all over the place. So for them to go back, I guess maybe they tried to scrub their data and remove all the posts and everything. But I remember it all over social media that they admitted, that they had, they were hit by Medusa, and Medusa came out because they were bashing them all over the place, saying, these guys are not taking it seriously. They don't want to make a reasonable offer. They were actually taunting this organization for not doing proper negotiations.
Sure. And the other crazy thing, and Kelly can definitely chime in here, they weren't fined for lying. They were fined for other HIPAA violations, which include lying is fine. No one will.
No, that's it's anticipated, Corey.
It's expected, but I would say lying definitely should be maybe criminal thing like fraud. But I mean, if you look at their HIPAA violations, it's essentially a summary of they didn't really do the whole HIPAA thing. They kind of just were like, HIPAA, hippo, never heard of it. So yeah, if you look at the list, I mean, Kelly, have you read? I mean, chime in here. Like, is this a normal size fine for HIPAA? This seems big for HIPAA. Is it just me?
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that. HIPAA fines were relatively small. They've gotten bigger over the last 10 years or so, and they're going to get bigger. Now, we talked about this a couple newscasts ago, where HHS has a proposed Security Act rule coming out in 2025. But let's be honest, the thing that's really disturbing is how often healthcare systems are hit by ransomware. And I think they're just really trying to say, listen, you guys can't say, well, the doctors need access, so we're not going to do MFA or any sort of security. They can't be using that excuse anymore. Okay, here's my 2 cents. I don't think HIPAA is all that difficult to implement. And if you look at what they were fined for, they weren't doing any awareness training whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, they did nothing. They basically didn't. I mean, there was like to give everyone, how low the bar can get. There was no password policy until January 2024. Mind you, they were breached. They were breached in 2020. 4 years it took them after the breach to be like, maybe we should have a password policy. Maybe
it took them 4 years to get through the incident of the investigation to determine reasonable measures.
Well, and the servers were in the break room, so you could heat up your burrito and check on the server at the same time.
No, here's the best part. So the server's in the break room. They have no password policy. They have like zero security posture at all, and they made backups, but they didn't test them. So when we needed them.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We were just formatting a hard drive.
Oh my God. It's
I don't even know.
Let's just use John's analogy. Just look at the darn cats in the chat. Look at the darn cats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like some of these YouTube comments or comments are hilarious. One person, Casley Joseph, said, "We had your data in our pocket when we had them in the washer." Sorry.
But I guess let's take because I don't know too much about the organization, but at what point does the business. Okay, so we have a hosting company that's hosting the data. Granted that their fault, they had some problems, but there was mention of cybersecurity awareness training. Is that really up to the hosting company? It's like saying, Microsoft or AWS is supposed to give me training because I'm hosting data in their infrastructure.
No, I think
this
they were
isn't
talking
a
about the
hosting company. I think that might be a different article you're thinking about. But yeah, this
Maybe.
is just a small It's just like a small dental. They have like 5 locations. It's just like a small dentist firm.
Oh,
whatever
so
you
it
wanna
wasn't
call
the data center one. Okay, my apologies.
No, I mean, I mean, there's been a lot of ransomware hits, right? But
so I think the HIPAA was going after the organization as a whole. So like they're saying like if there is HIPAA data, you have to do these things like have a password policy and like have the bar's like really low, by the way. Like, having a password policy, like
having a poster that says HIPAA.
Remember,
right?
They're planning on updating that, and we can have Kelly talk about this, but they're planning on kind of updating that HIPAA stuff. It's and I think it's a good thing. So.
Yeah, they released a preliminary of it for it, and CISA released one for IT last Friday or today, one of the two.
Mr. Strand, did you go away and swear and then come back?
Probably.
I did, actually.
He just goes off in the corner, punches the pillow, and says the F word 15 times, and then comes back.
That's actually a good idea.
So what happened?
Let me demonstrate.
Is somebody on that accidentally unmute them?
I think Ryan can't actually unmute this.
And that's about all I've got to say about that.
We should get someone to like be the live censor and like beep while we like beep. Yeah.
For everyone who is listening on audio, John just said a lot of cuss words in a row.
If you're a lip reader, we apologize.
Yes, you may possibly be offended by this podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So
I got to be
talk
honest.
About that. Let's get on the gravy train. Let's get on that.
I think I've solved my swearing problem.
No.
Just mute.
Let's get on that. Let's get on that gravy train.
What's in the gravy?
So this hit my radar, and I think a lot of people's radar. Gravy Analytics, which is apparently a location tracking service, which I don't know. Like that sentence is kind of a nasty sentence. I don't even know why that exists. But basically, this hit wide because on a Russian forum, someone posted a data sample from a location tracking company called Gravy Analytics. One of the interesting tidbits, I went searching for the breach data, couldn't really find it. It seems like the rumor is that they paid the ransom or whatever, and so the attackers took down the data. But there could be, that's just a rumor. But there's actually a list though that was published of over, I think it's like 10,000 apps that they track data from, that they get location data from. So that's terrifying. But yeah, basically it just kind of puts the fine point on these organizations that track people's locations are notorious targets for hackers, right? Like it's a US based firm. And there's over, it's collecting location data from over 10,000 applications or whatever. Like it's so much impact you could do with that data, right? Like, you can dox tons of people. And they claim to have like 17 terabytes of data, which is like a terrifying amount and probably includes US politicians and high profile individuals and et cetera, et cetera. Obviously everyone plays games on their phone. If you're a US official, you got to play, all the good games on your phone that track your location.
Well, you got to be doing something whenever you're waiting for votes, right? And it's funny. I went and watched The Big Short again last night. If you haven't, you should watch that movie. Much better than Margin Call, but Margin Call is good too. But it seems like with a lot of this data, it's a lot like that movie where you take this data and then you repackage it, you resell it, you repackage it, you resell it until the end of time, right? Like, and when they were talking about, oh my gosh, they got people's location data, and there's another one about license plates leaking real-time data feeds and vehicle locations. Once again, for $5, I can find all the different like traffic cameras and parking garages and different places, because these cities are selling this license plate data out to data brokers all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this weird disconnect that exists whenever people are talking about the privacy of this data, and they're talking about the privacy of license plates, and they're shocked whenever they find out about it. But I think they're more shocked about just how cheap it is to get that data if you're willing to go through legitimate sources. And I also don't think that people quite understand just how much of their information is out there.
So this license plate article. So what it was is their Motorola makes these ALPR cameras, and what they're designed for is actually like police departments and other kinds of like mobile deployments, right? And what they do is they put them on vehicles and they automatically capture all these plates, okay? And the goal of these systems is to put them into a database so they can create alerts, right? So they could type in a license plate and probably be able to correlate where that car was at a certain time, other things like that. Maybe just another police car saw it but didn't know, or the police car could get alerted that that is a suspect vehicle, right? And so that's why they're out there. But when this security researcher started diving into them, they found out that, essentially there was no security on these devices. And you could access them remotely. You could pull down the straight ALPR data, so just the license plate, make, model, stuff like that.
And that's the thing that I think is new in the story, right? Like you could always access a ton of cameras and you could find those, but whenever you get the ALPR data, it's like, whoa,
Well,
that's where
Talk about location data. Can you imagine how much you could dock someone with this? Like, you know where their car is all the time, or potentially all the time.
You're not supposed to have access to these. They're supposed to be vehicle mounted in a car, like on a local network. So I guess the security deployment was more of like supposedly a layered approach that everyone forgot about that first layer, which was, blocking it off from the internet. But, that's essentially what happened.
People forget that all the time.
Well, a lot of this law enforcement stuff, I mean, we've even seen one of our clients, actually, we found an exposed camera. And we were like, how did this happen? They were like, well, it was required to be exposed for law enforcement purposes because basically like they required for whatever law enforcement reason that the stream of this camera would be exposed, but they never provided an IP address list or like a host name, something to allow this access. So it's like, it's kind of the Wild West when it comes to this sort of stuff. Like they need to have access to these camera feeds, or maybe not. Maybe they're just badly configured. But in their minds, they need to have access to these feeds, or their tools or their vendors do, but they just never actually go that extra step of locking it down.
I'll say it
years ago, we were testing an organization, just kind of kicking out a story for this. The organization, it was an external penetration test coming into the organization. And it's actually one of my favorite tests. We were able to gain access to their conferencing camera system, and they had default creds. So we could go through and we could watch the videos of like meetings live. We could just go in, but they were also recording the videos as well. So we could go back and we could look at all the different videos associated with each of the meetings that they were using for their IT team around the world. And I think we did get domain admin. Like we got it. It was just standard spearfish and then pivot, gain access to DA. It was pretty straightforward. But the reason why I absolutely loved this test is we were able to go through, find all of their meetings, and then the IT meeting, there was IT meeting to discuss current penetration test. And we basically just went into the recording of the meeting. And it's a lot like this, where the person that's talking gets the video camera feed. And that's Ryan that's doing that in the background because he's awesome. But this is one of those where the person that's talking gets that feed, and then it goes to the next person, goes to the next person, goes to the next person. And one of the people was just ripping on us like the whole time. Like, this company, who the hell is Black Hills Information Security? These guys suck. There's no way they're going to get anything about this entire company. Just ripped on us up one side and down the other. And it was great because we put the picture of that person talking about how bad we sucked in the pen test report with the caption quoting that person, Black Hills Information Security, who the hell are they? I'm sure they suck, end quote. And I love that report. I've got to go find that report. So you see these cameras exposed, not just like traffic cameras and things like that, but the amount of video conferencing systems and cameras that are exposed is just like a Shodan search away. And I think there's probably like 10, 15 different types of Shodan searches to pull down and identify these devices. And the data that you can find sometimes is just outright terrifying.
Yeah, the RTSP streams are out there. A lot of these things are not configured properly. I mean, they're all over the place, right? And actually, it comes really to the fact that a lot of the vendors, like hardware software, is not updated, right? Like it has this like life where you just set it up, plug it in, and never update it again. And so yeah, they've got a reputation. So
yeah. Exactly.
That's a great lead into our cybersecurity mark of trust story.
The mark of the web.
I don't know what this is. What? Oh God,
no,
where is this going?
We put it in the link in our show notes about the new cybersecurity trust, like
the good housekeeping seal of approval from
I see it. It's The Verge, which we know if you've watched the Verge PC build video, you know how good they are with tech.
They love computers.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, so this is something that the Biden administration has been pushing for a long time, is to put as John would say, the good housekeeping seal of approval on devices. And I think, Ralph, one of their objectives was to do that thing that you just mentioned. These devices sit years not being updated with software, firmware updates, BIOS, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, it is kind of cheesy and it's a government program, but I think it's a good place to start. We just have to tell everyone, hey, there is such a program. Hey, there's reasons to trust that label. And if it makes you pay $3 or $4 more at Walmart, it's worth it. Those are my thoughts on it.
The question that I have about it, because I was looking at a couple of articles over the last week on this subject, is it sounds like it's voluntary. It's not like everybody sends stuff to a UL or some laboratory or some place that actually tests it. It sounds like it's self-reporting, self-saying, and a company has to volunteer in to go ahead and be able to do this stuff. Nor did I see any sort of repercussions if something gets hacked and doesn't have this seal on it. Will it be able to catch on in that instance?
It's a carrot. It's a carrot. It's not a stick.
Okay. I don't know. I'm going to try not to rant, because if I rant, I swear.
Can we get a BHIS seal of approval? Could we do that?
Awesome. Okay, so I will say that, yeah, John, resist the rant, because you can't not swear if you rant. Right. Basically, I guess my take on this is, if, let's say, hypothetically, your weird uncle calls you up and says, hey, I'm at Best Buy, I'm looking for a new Wi-Fi router. What should I buy? Like, would you be able to tell them anything with the magical government checkbox you can buy? Like, is that the idea? Or, I mean, could we end up in a world where that could be the case? Because if so, that would actually be pretty cool. But I feel like if I told him to buy the government approved router, he'd be like, hell no, they put the 5G in the router. You got the microchips. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I think that this is a start. Okay. So I'm going to start out by trying to do the poop sandwich, right?
Good job, John.
I think it's a start. Okay. I think its heart's in the right place. That's the outer part of the sandwich. Now we get to the poop. This is stupid. And the reason why I think that this is absolutely stupid is, if you put this like seal of approval on a device, okay, you put the seal of approval on a device. Let's say we have a device that is magically secure today. Let's say it has, the code is completely secure top to bottom today. We wrap it up, we vacuum seal it, and we put it into a Radio Shack that's going out of business, right? Radio Shack goes out of business, its doors close down, it collects dust for 5-6 years. And then all of a sudden, this magical package that was vacuum sealed, by the way, and protected against the elements comes out, and it still has that good housekeeping seal of approval on it. You unwrap it, you put it in your house. Is it still secure? No. So my problem with this is, I look at it, somebody said false advertising. I don't want to say it's false advertising, because that denotes some type of malicious intent, and I don't like that. But if you're looking at this whole idea, it strikes me as an idea of a bunch of people that don't understand computer security trying to come up with a solution to computer security, where they're like, you know what we need? We need a seal of approval. Me and Corey are great on stupid people accents. I just sound like I normally do outside of this web. All we need to do is put a little sticker on it, and say, we just make sure that the stuff's secure. You see, we just and now all of a sudden I'm Ross Perot, right? So we'll stick with Ross Perot. It's like, you got the sticker, you put it on the thing, you see, and no, that's not Ross Perot. I'm jumping over my accents at this point. Now I'm a gangster in the 30s.
John,
you put the sticker on the box. You say it's secure. People buy it because it's secure, and that doesn't mean it's secure moving forward into it. And as Eric just said, question is, does the governing body issue these stamps? Are they now liable if it's not secure? I like that question. So I'm going to close out the sandwich. This is a start. People's hearts are in the right place. Instead of putting a sticker or something on the box or a device or any of those different things, I would like to see it go to companies, right? You can say that this company produces as secure software. They have good software development lifecycle practices. They're doing things the best that they possibly can. There's some type of audit. You can put in a letter of attestation from a testing company. CISA can go give these things away, but they can lose it. It is something that, like, if all of a sudden, God forbid, Oracle, or heaven forbid, or God, that's $5.
No, it's not. No, it's not. God forbid is not $5.
No, it's 10. Thank you, Corey.
No, it's horrible.
So the point is, I think we need something like this, but it's like completely anathema the way that this is being ran for computer security completely, because it has this idea that something can be a secure state. A device can be secure, and once it's secure, it's secure. And security is a continuous, updated process that we always have to work for, and that's what we're actually
I can think of some products too that are like actually well maintained from a security perspective, and they still have issues, right? They're getting updates, they're getting tested, they're going through these processes, but because there's so many of them out there, and maybe just whatever something happens, then it still has an issue, like you're saying, John, right? Like, this sticker's never going to go on. But the other side of it is the real question that I have about any sticker, anything would be, are they actually getting tested, and are they continuing to update this thing? What's the life cycle? When do I know that I need to get rid of this thing because it's going to get no more security updates? At least Microsoft.
And Ralph, I think that for me is a much more interesting question. A company that comes up with an exploit, do they have the capability of pushing out updates, and do they do so successfully?
Yeah. I mean, that's really something you need, right?
My fear is you're going to have product X ends up with an exploit for it. Product Y is immediately going to petition the competitor, the United States government, to remove that good housekeeping seal of approval.
Bad happen.
It starts to get really nasty about it. So
it would be pretty. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to go down a massive dumpster fire here, but let's just say I got a Linksys or whatever generic Best Buy big box store router, and it has that stamp on there. 6 months later, one of you fine folks or somebody else creates an RCE for it. Yeah. And I don't know, because I'm grandpa, just watching my Netflix and chilling. Well, I can't say that. Never mind. I'm watching Netflix, and I don't know that this thing is there going to be a mechanism to send out massive mailers to everybody? Are you going to require everybody to give legitimate addresses?
They're going to email grandpa. They need a recall.
Well, I think my hot take would be, if the device has this stamp of approval, it should have auto updates enabled. Like, I don't think this. That would be my. That would
but
be.
Microsoft doesn't do it.
No, but Microsoft doesn't have the stamp. They also don't really make IoT stuff either. But I would say,
thank you, John.
Truthfully, like, I don't know what the criteria actually are, but if one of the criteria is auto updates, that would be such a huge bar. Like, if I could tell a family member, go buy one of these devices that has this checkbox because it means you won't have to manually update it when an RCE comes out, that's actually a huge win for me, and I would tell someone to do that. The other thing, they talk about scanning QR codes on the boxes. How cool would it be if you could scan a QR code on the box and it would take you to the pen test report for the product from a company like Black Hills Information Security or IO Active or any other firm that does this type of penetration testing? That'd be really cool to see, like, a little scorecard.
It's like those dolls from that show Wicked that takes you to the website, wicked.com.
Yeah, but it's a pen test report. It takes you to a pen test report.
But how many of you guys and gal are in a mindset that I am in currently? This is just a bunch of noise to get us talking about something that's never going to see the light of day.
It is, but it kills time on our show. So
What are we
This is-
I mean,
Eric,
I'll be over
you
my
just
corner.
figured it out. You
Yeah.
figured out the point of a podcast, my friend.
it's all marketing and turtles the whole way down.
That's the title.
All
We
of it.
figured out the point of this podcast.
All right. Speaking of
We're
0
at
days
10
and
now?
RCEs, we should probably talk about that. I mean, I think we should let the audience decide if God forbid is a swear. That is
I
not.
don't
That
think
is not
so.
a swear.
No.
to
Oh,
me.
I'm putting
why
it
don't-
in because
Why
there
don't
are
you just
people that-
use Stormlight Archive swears? Just start saying like storms and stuff like that. I thought
blood
I
and
had this
ashes
idea.
and storm and bloody
Yeah.
ashes or
Yeah.
whatever.
All right,
Well,
let's
Let's
hold
talk
on,
about
wait.
Avanti. Let's talk
We
about
can
Avanti.
discuss this. Let's talk about
So
Avanti.
there
Yeah.
was talking about RCEs. I mean, this is again, it's like T-Mobile. Every time we bring them up, they got hacked.
They always get hacked. Every
Yeah,
time.
so I mean, basically, there's not a huge story here, but patch your Avanti Connect Secure stuff. There's another RCE. It's been abused by Chinese threat actors for remote code execution, and it's already hit the UK domain registry Nominet. So this is in the wild. Patch your Avanti stuff if you have it. They used to be Pulse Secure. If you don't know what it is, but yeah, and that's basically I mean, they probably shouldn't have a security seal of approval. They've had a lot of RCE.
All right, so
and
how many breaches do they have to have before you can't get one again? Like, you're kind of like on the ban list. I mean, because T-Mobile
get
should
put in
not
the
even be a
corner.
carrier anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we
that
talked
gets in-
about
that gets into the question. Everyone talks about what is it going to take for companies to move forward with any type of computer security, and I think we always say it comes down to the money, right? And you have this breach,
absolutely.
and then 2 weeks later, their stock price is right back up to where it was. No one cares, right? In the
No.
executive,
and this
in
is a
the
legacy product. This is a legacy product. I don't think they're actually trying to sell this product anymore. I could be wrong, but I think this is the worst acquisition in the history of acquisitions. They acquired this Pulse Secure product, and then I will say, to their credit, they have issued patches for all of the vulnerabilities that have come out. They haven't pulled a D-Link and said buy a new router. Sorry.
who just bought Silence from BlackBerry?
Wait, Silence
someone
got
weird.
sold again?
Yeah, Silence got sold again. We talked about it. It was someone you wouldn't expect.
Arctic
no.
Wolf. Are you
Arctic
sure
Wolf,
that
yeah.
that is the worst
Arctic
purchase?
Wolf.
Yeah. I don't know. There's some pretty bad purchases, or the first sell to BlackBerry, where BlackBerry lost $1 billion on that sale. That's pretty bad.
Why?
I mean,
It feels like they're just selling off scraps. Anyways, not to rehash.
Yeah.
moving on.
Do you guys want to talk about this Path of Exile thing? It's kind of an interesting
Yeah,
one.
that's cool. I swear, when I was reading this, I'm like, is Beyond Trust in here? Is Beyond Trust in here? Beyond Trust has got to be in here somewhere.
Basically,
So-
this is a hack in Path of Exile 2, which is the newer version of Path of Exile, which is like a Diablo type game, like a, I forget what they call it, a
Dungeon crawl? Is that
not
what
an
RPG?
ARPG.
What,
Yeah,
what's the
ARPG, you are correct. Action
Yeah.
RPG, yeah.
So
Dungeon
before
crawler.
we-
I would accept Dungeon Crawler as well.
Okay, Dungeon
On
Crawler
you.
/ ARPG.
Woo!
Path of Exile 2, an admin account was hacked. So this is like on their website, which they use to facilitate in-game transactions. It sounds like these admin accounts didn't have two-factor auth. Someone password guessed or credential stuffed their way into an admin's account and then disappeared a bunch of items from people's, inventories.
Do you think this is how Elon got to the top 20?
Yes.
That was in the article. They were like, apparently Elon's been cheating at Path of Exile too.
He's been cheating at all video games.
So maybe
Oh,
this
just
is
got people that
Even
just
the
like
ones in real life.
Yeah.
so. I mean, I guess really, I do want to give a shout out to the company behind this.
Yes.
The developer went on a podcast and basically said, like, the direct quotes are in the article, but it's "we effed up. We screwed this up. We're sorry. We're going to make it right." I will say the number of affected accounts was like 66, which is a ridiculously low number out
but
of
to go and own it up,
250,000.
To go and own up to it is just
Yeah.
awesome, right?
Totally.
I- And I think we're all shocked whenever we see that in the news today. And I keep wondering, how long is it going to be until companies can see like the right way and wrong way of handling a breach and notifying their customers? And, whenever you see it done right, the security community is like, okay, you messed up. Okay, what are we going to do different? This is what we're going to do different. We move on with our lives. It's the companies that try to minimize, diffuse, and lie and just kind of downplay the entire thing that really get into a tremendous amount of trouble. And I'm just wondering how long it's going to be until companies start to see that trend. But yeah, this was really a class act for them. So kudos.
The people in chat using the Stormlight Archive swears.
Is that what we're doing now?
I love
Thank
it. I
you.
love it.
By the storm.
Yeah. So we talked about this on the beginning, John, but the whole hackers hiding info stealers inside of POC exploits.
Oh,
on
you already
GitHub.
talked about it? I
No, we
submitted that
didn't. We
news
didn't.
article. Oh,
No, you're
okay.
here
I
for it.
submitted
We
that
talked
news
about it.
article just for you. Once
So-
I read that, I was like, this
Yes,
is
thank
Corey.
you.
You
for
knew he was
letting
going to
me-
bring it up. He couldn't help it. He'd sniff him
Allow
out. He'd
me-
read every one for that.
Let me get my BHIS issued soapbox out from under my desk here. So this is another info stealer article. I think it's funny to read through the exploit chain. So basically, this is on GitHub, very, in my opinion, sketchy looking exploit for LDAPNightmare, which is a high profile vulnerability, which I don't think has an exploit yet. If you look at the repo,
Testing companies have been looking for it though, and this is one of those things that spooked me about BHIS. Right?
Yeah, but John, look at the repo. So Ryan, pull up the repo and tell me, John, would you clone this? So Ryan could pull up the news article with the repo.
It's just poc.exe.
Yes. So the repo, which
I would
is
definitely run this for
yes.
sure.
So I will say, I agree with you.
Ash's eyes. Oh my word.
I will say, I agree with you that it's spooky. However, in this instance, I don't think there's any self-respecting pen tester that would clone a purported Python repo that just has one file called poc.exe and then run that exe.
It's like freecandy.exe.
Yeah. So basically,
I disagree. I think that there's a
you can read the source code. You can read the source code because it's on GitHub, right?
I think there's a huge number of pen testers that get stuck and they're like, they need something, and they're stuck.
But they're on Kali. They can't even run POC.
I'll give you another one. There's a huge number of blue teamers who are just going to pull this down and they're like, oh, all it is an exe, run it. Hopefully, then they can then build detections for
only
it.
More hacker
which
EXEs
definitely. I fell for one of those back when the dude put a canary token in it. But I will admit, my vulnerability manager guy hit me up. He's like, hey, Wade, run this for me so you can like run the detection. Not even thinking about it, just trusting him, pulled the repo down and immediately saw this PDF. And I'm like, that's weird. I opened the PDF and it's a canary token. And I'm like, you son of a bitch. I'm going to.
$5.
I didn't agree to anything. I wasn't here.
$15 for EFF.
So, I mean,
do you all remember the Anna Kournikova naked thing? Some of you may not be old enough for
Is that an email, like original email fish?
Yeah.
So I came into work one day, kind of on, you were talking about your manager. I came into work one day, I open up my email in the morning and I have like thousands of emails that are like Anna Kournikova naked. And I like yell at the cube over to my boss. I'm like, Edmundo, hey, Edmundo. And just as I'm yelling at him, I all of a sudden get a bunch of emails from him that he clicked on it. Right. And he's like, what? I'm like, never mind. But it was so awesome because he was like, in my defense, you wanted to click on it too. And I'm like, no.
After John finished checking every single one of those emails, then he
everyone, because one might be legit, Ralph. You know.
Yeah. If AI was around, that could have saved you a lot of time.
So when people are talking about InfoSec people doing dumb things, like I'm with Wade. I'm totally right there because boy, I've seen pen testers, especially junior ones, that are super, super desperate. I remember when I used to have to pull down all of my exploits from Packet Storm. I remember there was an exploit that I was pulling and it was just like heavily encoded. It was like 19 pages long. And I'm like, I don't know if I trust this. But no, I almost ran it. I did. And it was totally a backdoor.
Well, so this program isn't that much more advanced than anakournikova.vbs or whatever.
No, it's not.
This basically, so the exe is a UPX exe, which UPX, I'm assuming it didn't get
unpacker for execute. That still works. People
yeah,
still
so
use that?
well, I mean, okay, not really, right? But it pulls down a UPX, which extracts a PowerShell script, which then creates a scheduled task. Like it's a disaster of like chained exploits. It pulls down a stager from Pastebin. There's so many red flags.
Oh my god!
This is like a
but it feels like the way we tested probably 8-9 years ago, right? Like we would use maybe longer than that, maybe 10.
ChatGPT
a
can definitely
PowerShell
write
with the
something
stager. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to use UPX and Yoda and Themida and all of those different things.
Oh
That was
gosh, yeah.
I
So
will
what-
say,
what
I
was the
do
end
think
result
that
of this thing
the
after
the random
when you ran it, what
Korean
happened,
characters that they would bother
I
people.
love Eric G8857 said, president of the company I worked for in May 2000 clicked on the attachment of an I love you virus. He couldn't believe that anyone actually loved him.
Wow, that one burns all the way back in 2000.
It does. Kind of like me after the testers meeting today. I'm not clicking on anything from you guys.
So Corey, what did happen though? This essentially once all of that magic.
I mean, basically, it's an info stealer.
Yeah, okay.
So it pulls down
Of
a
course,
PowerShell
it,
script.
it always ends up there.
Yeah. So it's target, but I will say, like, it proves, which, you know, you might not think this, but we are targets as pen testers, as people who have the keys to the kingdom that we obtained illicitly. We are, you know, targets for this kind of thing. So it's just to keep in mind. I mean, we've talked a lot about supply chain type stuff, vulnerabilities in exploits or exploits in exploits. And this is just one more of those. So yeah, use a trusted repo like Black Hills Information Security or other people's repos that you can actually trust.
If you can't see the source code, don't run it.
Yeah.
And maybe just run that through VirusTotal. If you
One
know,
time.
maybe run
Or
that through
sandbox
VirusTotal.
it. That's an
sandbox
idea.
it. Yeah.
Sandbox.
Yes.
Sandbox it. Yeah.
Like pen testing, you know, checking it, like, it's like, oh, well, that looks like malware. Of course it does, right? Well, that's what it's supposed to be. I'm gonna.
That's
run
funny.
that.
I actually I wonder. I don't think it is funny though. Yeah, you're right. A real POC eventually would get flagged as malware. Eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we really rarely trade around binaries like this. Usually, I mean, it does happen when you have something like Java you have to exploit that only is exploitable via a binary. Like you need a JavaScript binary to do it, or a Java binary. But generally, these types of exploits are not binaries. They're usually like open, you know, Python typically.
Well, and even if it is a binary, usually the source code is provided with it. You know?
Yeah. I want to compile it myself. Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about this AWS native encryption thing. This is a quick article, but I do think it's cool. It's pretty cool.
I think it's cool too, but they're back to just looking for open S3 buckets.
No, it's not open.
Well, no, it's not an open S3 bucket because that's not how the encryption works.
No. So this is seriously all it is ransomware can affect S3 buckets once they compromise an account that has access to S3. The cool thing about it is they just use a customer provided key to encrypt the data.
Wait. Oh, publicly. Sorry. Using publicly exposed or compromised AWS keys. I thought it was publicly exposed or compromised.
No, so if you expose data in S3, I can't change your server side encryption. I have to have a token to do that, right? So I have to have API access.
So mean.
Yeah.
But it's actually not that mean. And the reason it's cool is because, ransomware, do you trust if the decryptor works? Because you might pay the ransom and then the decryptor doesn't work. At least with this, you know the decryptor works because it's just native S3 encryption.
But the self-destruct timer for 7 days, it's like, it's just...
Well, that's an industry standard in the ransomware region.
Standard. So, wait. So, Corey, the way the S3 server-side encryption works, right, is that you can add a key, right, in the S3. So they're adding their own key. So obviously, for everyone, for context, you have to have access to the API, right? So they have an API credential for
disclosed key or compromised account.
So once they do that, then they're going to use you can go create a customer. So I'll use the word customer, but you can create an encryption key to use on that bucket, right?
Which is great for security. If you're HIPAA compliant, if you want to be HIPAA compliant in S3, you're going to have to provide your own keys because you can't have Amazon keys encrypting your data. Yeah.
Yes. So that's a server-side encryption key. So what they do is they upload their own key to the service to encrypt it and then remove the key. Is that the idea?
Yeah, they basically they basically supply a custom key, encrypt all the data, and then they have the custom key. So unless you pay them to buy that custom key, and if it was destroyed, then the data is unrecoverable. So
the way that I, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is honestly an honest question. The way I view this is like this SSH version of we have updated our SSH keys. Here's a new private key. That way you can authenticate against the SSH server. It's kind of the same thing, right? Where they've updated their own custom cert, and now they can do whatever they want to. They ransomware the files, and you cannot access or do anything because you don't have the new private key, correct?
Basically, yeah. I mean, so
Okay.
it's like normally on S3, I would say it's probably rare for people to be using these customer provided keys. Usually, most people are either having no encryption or they have Amazon provided keys, which are basically just generated and managed by Amazon. The key part of this, pun intended, is that
Oh.
with the customer provided keys, Amazon does not have a copy. So that, which is good for security if you're trying to do end-to-end encryption, but bad if you're trying to recover stolen data. So again, it's nothing new. It's just ransomware being ransomware, but it is interesting to think about using native functions of a cloud app to encrypt data. I mean, I don't know. It's
Did
kinda
they
cool.
have to? So here's my thing, though, right? So the way S3 works, if you add like a custom key or you use Amazon's key, is when you add an object, it encrypts it with that key, right? So let's say you upload a file, right? So, but if there's a bunch of files already there, you would have to re-upload every one of those files to be encrypted.
No, I think it has a function to roll all of the data.
Yeah, I thought it.
So
I
like
think-
Amazon in the back end is just taking each chunk and encrypting it, right?
With that key.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
like old data. Is that the thing? Oh man, that's wild.
Well,
That was-
I think there is like a re-encrypt management function in AWS.
Okay,
but I'm not sure.
okay.
That's getting into
Okay.
like the deep. But I mean, like John said though, they do also use AWS to set the expiration date of the file. So it's basically like, you could as an admin cut out the threat actors and unset the expiration date, but you'd still have to get that key back. So it's basically just kind of an interesting. We've seen a lot of
way to do the encryption, right?
Exactly. It's just it's not really new or scary. It's just kind of a novel technique for encrypting data, because we know for ransomware threat actors, it's a race. If they can't encrypt all the data before they get caught, then they don't have a valid ransom demand. So it's just kind of interesting to think about. Like, let's say you had backups in S3, cough cough, all the organizations that do that. Now, that's a potential risk.
They encrypt your encrypted data from your backup.
Exactly. They're like, whoa, it's okay. We have backups in S3. They're like, oh, those are encrypted too. You're like, dang it.
Yeah, I'm looking through some of the IOCs right now, and just like in a traditional ransomware where they delete the VSS, volume shadow shares, they're actually deleting the snapshots and all the versioning in S3.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, so there is immutable backups in S3. So the immutable ones that you can't modify. You can't encrypt later on. You can't. That's like they don't have that function, right? I think there's like the way that they do the immutable backups is they pretty much put like a time lock on it. So there'll be like a certain time that has to expire before you could delete the files or whatever. So
yeah. I mean, you could still do it. It's just if you use the native default settings in S3 and that's where your crown tools are, this is something to think about. Don't just assume, well, it's a ransomware threat actor. They got into our on-prem file shares. Those are encrypted, but S3 should be fine.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, I will say also a growing number of companies do not use on-prem file shares at all. So this is just a way for ransomware threat actors to hit a wider audience.
Yeah.
One more article. I want to talk about the Stiiizy Cannabis hack, specifically because of the data that was disclosed in the hack.
Are we going to end on a high?
Yeah.
Nice. Man, she got us right at the end.
So I'm assuming it's pronounced Stiiizy, but it's ST3IZY. So Stiiizy. I don't know. Or
The marketing
Stiiizy?
team was working on that.
I don't
for a
know.
while.
Anything with 3 repeating letters in it, it's marijuana related. But yeah, basically the company got hacked. This is a marijuana delivery or cannabis delivery service that's apparently pretty popular in California. They're living in 2035, being able to get weed delivered to their door. But the interesting thing about it is, as you'd imagine, this company has to do KYC. So know your customer, meaning to get cannabis products delivered to your door, they have to verify that you're over the age of 21. What that means is they have to have copies of your driver's license or your KYC data. And in this case, we see that the KYC data was disclosed. So it's kind of just, I think it's a tough thing. This is actually wrapped up in other industries right now. Like there's all these porn bans in different states that require KYC to access. But I think this type of data, KYC data of like people's government documents, people's, health information, medical cards, it's really risky to store it, and it's increasingly more and more required to have it. And so it's kind of a tricky thing where, like, you know, if you're just walking into a pot shop and dropping $20 on the counter, no big deal. But if they have your driver's license, it's a much bigger deal. So I think it's just interesting, like, to think about where our KYC data is being stored, how it's being stored. It's so tough, like, to keep that, you know, data locked down.
Yeah. So if you don't have to collect it, you don't want to collect it, right? Like that's just like the rule number one for data security. If you don't need that, don't try to collect it. So
yeah.
So Corey, I got a question. Why, I don't quite understand why they were collecting and keeping government issued IDs.
Because they have to be able to prove to the government that all the customers were over the age of 21. That's the thing.
For weed shops, you have to show an ID in order to get in, and then they have to scan it and put you in a database in order for you to be able to buy.
To deliver. Yeah.
Not even just deliver. To go into a shop and buy it, you have to give them their ID, and you have to make an account, and you have to give them your address as well as a copy of your photo ID in order for them to have that. I've thought about this. They have all of that data for every customer that comes in.
Forever and ever? Like, there's no, like, we only keep it for like 30, 60, 90 days?
And then the scarier part is that data was then being used for other stuff. That was like saying, like, if you had ever gone to any weed shop and your ID was scanned, you can no longer get a concealed weapons permit, or you couldn't buy guns. There was a bunch of weird stuff then tied with it. This is back in the day. I don't know. I'm not as caught up as much now, but to this day, when you walk in, I got kids. I mean, to this day, I actually went to one on New Year's to go buy like CBD for my dog. And they had to take my ID. They had to like scan it in the system. I already had an account there because I had bought CBD for her last year.
You're on a watch list now.
I am. No, that's not the only watch list I'm on. We all know that. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's tough. Like I think the funniest thing that came out of the chat is that the suggestion that like there would be like a weed delivery guy that would like come to your house and check your ID when he gives you the weed.
I mean, they do that if you get alcohol delivered.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They do.
So they don't do KYC in advance. They do on delivery. Is it like the DoorDash driver being like, "Yo, dude, show me your ID." Hold on.
There's a difference. KYC is know your customer, so you have to get their like actual. You have to save that information.
The government
right?
ID. Yeah.
But the alcohol is just proof of age, right? So I don't need to know. All I need to see is that your date is, on a government issued is update, but I don't need to save that information. Like I don't, need to take a picture of it to prove usually.
I definitely think we need a better system for storing KYC type data, right? Like more and more this is becoming required. Like I mentioned the porn thing, like basically the company that runs Pornhub and all those other large porn sites is basically not serving like 13 states right now, like Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina. Like there's a whole article about it because they are required to do KYC for their customers. Now
VPN sales are out the roof.
Yes.
Now, obviously,
hard to get on one.
For marijuana is one thing I guess we can all get behind of like kids shouldn't be buying marijuana and having it delivered to their doors. But it gets into like this KYC data is risky data to hold on to. And the more companies that are holding on to it, like bigbutts.com probably shouldn't have a copy of my driver's license, right? Like
nor do you want them to, right? Like those are the last companies you're going to want.
But that's what the law has required, if you think about it. So
I want to know for these sites exactly how many McLovins are in their databases.
So one thing to remember, if you go in person and on, like, they have all of the technology to verify that those IDs are absolutely real, and every single one of those places has an armed guard. Because the way that they handle money, right? They can't put their money in federal banks or anything that way, is because it's still illegal federally.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of sketchy stuff when you go in there. Almost all of them are really good, really clean looking, though, to tell you the truth. Like, I'd rather go there than most of the McDonald's. Like,
they're hauling in huge stacks of cash. But I gotta say, the best comment, Bambulance's comment: new FIDO2 token needed exclusively for weed and porn.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, it's a risk. Anytime this data is being collected, it's a risk. And now it's like government laws, things are requiring this data to be collected by more and more entities. It's kind of crazy.
And when this cannabis place gets hacked, all that data goes up in smoke.
It'll be like an
Oh, no.
Well played, Shecky.
All right,
Wow.
close it down.
Wow.
And with that, we're wrapping
Kill it
it
with
up,
fire.
everybody. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh,
See you all. in the next
Can I make
edition
one
of
quick
Black
announcement?
Oak Mate.
Wait, he has a
Talk about
plug.
food.
Plug.
I have one plug.
Oh, sure.
I just wanted to announce that Kelly
Plug.
is B-Side San Diego's keynote speaker this year. It'll be on March 29th if you want to come out to sunny San Diego on a Saturday, and it'll be a good time. So
And
San
bring your
Diego
ID.
is
Bring your
Diego's
ID.
known for being not on fire.
No,
And
there's been some
Nylon
bad
Burgundy?
fires in San Diego.
All right, never
I-
mind. San Diego
All right.
hopefully will exist in March.